Hello there, Trash Pandas! Today I thought we could talk about a game with great level variety, fun platforming, fantastic music and loads of gadgets. That's right, hang on, wait, no, that was last time.
Let's give it up for newcomers!
Ratchet and Clank.
Hey look, that's us!
You might have heard of Ratchet & Clank before, it got 100 or 200 sequels, and I'm gonna be upfront about this right from the start. This series contains some of my all-time favourite games. I was right there on the release day to pick up my copy, and I didn't put it down for months. Before Ratchet & Clank, I didn't really touch any sort of shooter, with, the odd exception like Metal Gear Solid. But I was almost entirely playing RPGs and platformers. But then Ratchet & Clank stood out as this unique hybrid. See, it was another platformer, coming from a pretty impressive pedigree as well, but just with weapons sprinkled in. No, not like that one. Never like that one. The story begins with our hero, the last surviving Lombax, working on a ship he put together and daydreaming about exploring the galaxy. Just as we learn his ship can't take off without a vital component that Ratchet just doesn't have, there's a crash in the distance, and so we're off to go investigate, where we end up meeting up with Clank. Just imagine someone shrunk the Iron Giant down and tried to bludgeon him with a thesaurus, and that's pretty much Clank. So Clank shows us the recording that sets the stakes for the entire rest of the game. Chairman Drek, absolutely not just the stand-in for every ruthless businessman ever, is in the market for real estate. His planet becomes so polluted that it was uninhabitable, so he's picking out the best parts of select worlds and building a new planet with blackjack and So Clank asks Ratchet to help him find the glorious and absolutely impeccable hero that is Captain Quark. Oh, and it just so happens that Clank is installed with just the exact part that Ratchet needs to get his ship flying, the robotic ignition system. So instantly, we have a valid reason for both characters to travel together. Ratchet really wants to explore space, Clank needs to save the galaxy, but neither of them can achieve their goals without the other. So off we go, hopping from planet to planet, uncovering more about Drek's plan, and learning the true meaning of friendship along the way. So like I've already said, this is primarily a platformer. The levels are all designed to have you leaping around like an acrobat, and coming straight from the Spyro games is just perfect for this. Insomniac absolutely know what they're doing. But with the increased power of the PS2, the scale of the levels is just sent through the roof, and the planet variety allows for some really creative environments. Oh, and we're getting away from the old world of 3D platforming just being a chore. Remember back in Spyro, when you just missed the ledge by a couple of pixels and then you'd fall to your death? Well, you see, Ratchet has hands. He can grab onto the ledge. That's not to say that it's been perfected, but usually it's more player error when you mess up and less the game just refusing to accept physics. Combat starts out pretty simple. Ratchet has a wrench that you can swing 3 times in a combo, slam it into the ground, or you can throw it like a boomerang. And it all works really well. The movements are surprisingly smooth, you can transition from one attack into the next easily, and you'll have no trouble dealing with swarms of small enemies. But I did say this was a shooter, didn't I? Well, sort of. The later Ratchet & Clank games delved much more into the third-person shooter angle, with more complicated enemies, as well as, the ability to strafe. But the first game though sort of has a more diluted version and lets the levels focus much more on exploration. Mind you, that's not to say it's a bad thing, the combat is definitely fun. The controls just make good use of the free 3D movement while locking onto the closest enemy in front of Ratchet, and for more precision you can still go into first person mode to aim, just at the cost of your movement. A little into the first planet you'll unlock the bomb glove, and get eased into the concept of having a main weapon with the wrench intended to be your backup. Then after this you'll start to see these nice little vendors scattered about. You tend to unlock a new weapon or two for each planet you visit, and the first few are pretty normal. There's the Pyrocitor, i.e. the flamethrower, and there's the blaster, i.e. well, it's a blaster. After this though, it gets a little bit out of hand extremely quickly, and you'll realise some of the weapons are just completely nuts. But to buy any of them, you're going to need bolts. Oh, so many bolts. Don't even get me started on the Rhino. And as you travel from planet to planet, you'll also start to unlock gadgets. Yes, we're doing gadgets again, bear with me. Generally, this is how the game forces you to explore each of the planets. Oh, what's that? You need to hack this terminal to open the door? If only there was a tool for that. But the scanners don't detect one on this planet. You get the idea. But it's not even a chore, the fantastic level design actually makes you want to explore each planet to its fullest. And coming back later with a new gadget that lets you access new areas just feels great. Some of the gadgets are just specific use items, like the Hydro Displacer that moves water around, or the Swing Shot that is just basically your grappling hook. But there's also upgrades for Clank that let you jump higher and hover, or speed up your swimming. And you're given them at a pace that you never really feel overwhelmed. Generally there'll be one specific area just after you get the gadget where you need to use it repeatedly, just to get the hang of it, but then after that it sort of gets sprinkled into the level design at a rate that actually feels pretty natural. You know, if you can suspend the disbelief at why every planet seems to have these glowing grappling points perfectly aligned. So, I've been trying my best not to just compare Ratchet and Clank to the Spyro games. But to be honest, I'm not even sure it would be a bad thing if I did. Both series have a very cocky but wholesome protagonist, although Ratchet is considerably more selfish at first. Both make great use of height in level design to get the best out of the player's ability to glide. They're both full of morbid slapstick humour. You get the idea. But at the end of the day, in my eyes at least, Spyro is about as perfect as you can get for an exploration-focused platformer. And for Insomniac to take something they've clearly turned into an art form and move it in another direction like space and technology, it just makes so much sense to me. It's no wonder really that Ratchet & Clank became the next big franchise. All of the right pieces were there. But I do sometimes wonder if deep down the real reason I loved this series so much is just because I was desperately craving more Spyro the Dragon. Or maybe I'm overthinking it, and the reality is that they're just both really fantastic series. But this has been a love letter to Ratchet & Clank. I do hope you've enjoyed my ramblings. If you did, please do consider hitting the like and the subscribe and all of that, because it really does help. But either way, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.